Story 1. When my parents retired, they gave the company to my cousin, said he deserves it more, you'll understand. So I smiled and backed off. 3 months later, I brought someone to dinner. My cousin dropped his wine glass. My mom started crying. It was the kind of dinner where everything looked perfect at first glance. The table was set with Mom's special occasion china. The wine glasses sparkled under the chandelier. Even the mashed potatoes looked like they've been shaped with a mold. My dad had shaved. My cousin wore a blazer and I showed up with a guest, a woman you'd think I'd brought home a unicorn. The moment we walked in, my mom's eyes lit up like she just witnessed divine intervention. "Well, look at you," she said, air-kissing both my cheeks and pretending she hadn't spent the last decade reminding me I was married to my work. My dad gave a short nod, finally brought someone around. I smiled, said nothing, let the assumptions roll in like fog. Emily, the cousin who always wore pearls and asked why I didn't soften my look, leaned across the table later and whispered, "Is she your girlfriend? She's very elegant." I smiled again, something like that. They all laughed, sipped their wine, and mentally penciled in a wedding date I never agreed to. My cousin Thomas raised his glass midway through dinner and gave the same speech he always did when he thought the spotlight wasn't bright enough. Something about legacy, sacrifice, carrying on the family name. The company had been in our family for 3 generations, and now it was his turn to lead. He thanked our parents for trusting him, thanked the guests for believing in him, thanked God for giving him the strength to take this on. He did not thank me or even look at me. I poured myself more wine. Next to me, my guest stayed perfectly quiet, polite, observant, the only one at the table who wasn't pretending this wasn't about to become the most memorable meal of their lives. 3 months ago, I found out they'd signed everything over to Thomas, the company, the voting shares, the title, the authority. After 15 years of working side by side with my father, managing operations, running logistics, cleaning up messes Thomas created, they gave him everything and gave me a smile and a vague, "You'll always have a place here," a place like a couch cushion or a spare chair. They sat me down in the living room like they were breaking sad news to a loyal pet. "It's not that you're not capable," my mom had said, reaching for my hand like she was afraid I'd faint. "It's just men like you aren't built for this kind of pressure. We didn't want to burden you. Your cousin," my dad added, "has that leadership instinct. He's decisive," which was one way of saying he guesses and hopes for the best. I asked if they were serious. My dad nodded like he was signing a peace treaty. My mom just said, "You'll make an excellent support system behind every great man." She trailed off like it was supposed to be comforting. I smiled. Then I went home and started making arrangements. Back at dinner, my mother leaned in and gave me a knowing look. "She's very pretty," she whispered, nodding toward my guest. "Is she in fashion? You know, with your cousin running things now, it's probably a good time to start thinking about next steps for yourself. You could still have a family." I blinked. "A family?" she beamed. "You've always wanted kids, right?" I hadn't, not particularly, but apparently what I wanted was irrelevant. As usual, Thomas was laughing with 2 of the board members who had shown up for the free steak and photo ops. One of them asked how it felt to be the man of the hour. He grinned. "I've been preparing for this since I was a kid. Uncle always said I had the natural instincts for it." Natural instincts, right? Like the instinct to blame me for missing quarterly goals. After spending the entire quarter playing golf and calling it networking, I took a slow sip of my wine. They were all smiling, comfortable in their delusions, congratulating themselves for making the smart choice. Dad leaned back in his chair, watching Thomas with pride, like he'd personally carved him out of oak and ambition. They had no idea what I'd brought with me, who I'd brought with me. But they would. By the time dessert arrived, the air was thick with self-satisfaction. The cake was a 3-tiered monstrosity with a company logo piped in gold icing. My mother actually clapped when they brought it out. "You've really made us proud, Thomas," she said, raising her glass. I tilted my head. Yes, so much pride in this room. Thomas grinned at me like I was finally falling in line. "I know it's not what you expected," he said, the tiniest smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth, "but you're going to love what we've got planned for you." Marketing is perfect for someone with people skills. I held his gaze, right, because nothing says vision like slogans and color palettes. He laughed, assuming I was joking. Everyone laughed with him, everyone except the woman sitting next to me. I glanced around the table at the faces I had known my whole life. My parents smug and satisfied, my cousins soaking in praise like a sponge in gravy, aunts and uncles toasting the next generation, and me, the dutiful son, smiling politely, just as expected. If only they knew, if they had any idea who the woman beside me really was, if they knew what I'd found in those documents, what I'd confirmed piece by piece over 3 long months, I'd imagine this night 100 different ways. The silence, the gasps, the outrage, the shattered version of the perfect family portrait they'd spent years trying to frame. They had no idea what was coming, but they were about to find out. And when they did, nothing, absolutely nothing, would ever be the same again. When I was 6, I told my parents I wanted to take karate. My dad blinked at me like I just told him I wanted to join the Navy. He glanced at my mom, then laughed. "You mean baseball, son?" I didn't, but I ended up in baseball anyway. League uniform, cleats, the whole thing. I hated every game. They said I was being difficult, too sensitive. Eventually I stopped complaining and just went quiet. When I was 8, my cousin got a remote-controlled car. I got a chess set. When I was 10, he got a tool kit. I got a model airplane kit. When I was 12, I told my dad I wanted to run a company like him. One day, he looked up from his newspaper and said, "That's sweet, but you'll have your hands full with a real career by then." My mom smiled like it was a compliment. "You'll make a wonderful artist." I remember nodding, smiling. Back then, I went to my room, closed the door, and cried until I fell asleep. That was the year I wished I was more like Thomas. Actually wished it like close my eyes and make it happen. Kind of wish. I thought maybe then they'd see me, listen to me, be proud of me. Instead, I was the polite one, the helper, the one who cleaned up after the messes, the one who didn't take up too much space. My cousin, he was the natural leader, which in our house meant he was loud, messy, and always right, even when he wasn't. By the time I was a teenager, I had stopped asking for things. No more karate, no more business books, just baseball and design and smiling on cue. They bought Thomas a telescope when he said he liked space once. I got a journal after I won a math competition. A journal because, sensitive boys have feelings, not futures. I kept thinking maybe if I worked harder, they'd see me. So I worked, I studied, I got top grades, fixed things quietly when they broke. At 14, I stayed up late organizing my dad's home office because he was stressed, he barely noticed. Thomas got praised for trying after spilling coffee on a spreadsheet. I won a regional debate competition at 15. My mom asked if I'd consider going into teaching. "It's such a nurturing job," she said. Thomas once argued with a waiter about a salad and got called assertive. And still, I told myself, maybe I just wasn't enough. Maybe if I smiled more, maybe if I didn't correct them, maybe if I played my role better, they'd finally say, "You're good at this." They never did. Things started to shift. Around my last year of high school, I had a friend named Kyle, smart, funny, bold. His dad ran a small business. His mom was an engineer. Kyle played soccer, did martial arts, wore whatever he wanted. His parents cheered when he said he wanted to run his own company one day, bought him business cards for Christmas. The first time I went to his house and saw how different it could be, I almost couldn't believe it. I remember walking home that night with this strange, heavy feeling in my chest. Not sadness, not anger, just realization. It wasn't who I was that was holding me back. It was my parents. Their voices had become the ones in my head. The ones telling me to shrink, to stay quiet, to make things easier for everyone else. So I stopped listening, not all at once, but piece by piece. I joined the school's business club, secretly at first, then proudly. I started saving money, researching programs, reading case studies at night while my parents thought I was planning my future art career. They still didn't see it, or maybe they refused to. At graduation, I gave a speech as valedictorian. My dad told me afterward, "That was really lovely. You should write something for your cousin's next event." In college, I majored in business, and joined every leadership program I could find. I interned, networked, learned how things really worked. And when I came home for breaks, I smiled, nodded, and let them keep thinking I was just helping out around the office. They never asked what I really did, never asked what I wanted. My cousin told everyone I was into admin stuff, like I got excited over spreadsheets. I said nothing because deep down, I still thought maybe if I just keep showing them, they'll come around. Maybe they'll finally say I'm ready. Maybe they'll finally see me. Then came the day they called a family meeting. We were all seated in the living room, cookies on the table, champagne chilling. The mood was weirdly formal. That's when they told us they were retiring, that the company was ready to be passed down. Thomas, just him. Not a partnership, not shared leadership, not even a courtesy mention of me to him. My father said it like it was the most obvious choice in the world. He's the natural fit. My mom nodded. You've always been so good at helping. You'll still be a part of things, sweetheart. They offered me a bonus check and said I'd always have a place like a stool in the break room. I didn't cry this time. I didn't argue. I smiled, said thank you, walked out of that room like I hadn't just been erased again. But something in me, something quiet and deep, shifted. I didn't feel invisible anymore. I felt done. A few days later, while sorting through some handover files, I found something strange. A folder that didn't belong there, a document that didn't add up. At first, I thought it was just another one of Thomas's mistakes. But the more I looked, the worse it got. I saw things I wasn't meant to see, things no one had told me, things that, if true, could change everything. I didn't scream. I didn't storm into anyone's office. I took a picture. Then I made some calls. Let them think I walked away. Let them believe I accepted it. Because soon they'd realize something they never saw coming. The son they pushed aside. He was done waiting to be picked. My cousin was halfway through yet another story about how he rescued the brand's reputation after messing up a client deal when Mark opened her briefcase and pulled out a slim folder quietly. No drama, just slid it onto the table like it was a menu. I didn't look at it. I didn't have to. My parents were still sipping wine, basking in the glow of their perfect evening, the celebration of legacy, as they called it. Legacy apparently meant handing the family business over to the least responsible person in the room. My mother raised her glass to Thomas, she said, and to strong leadership. I tapped my glass against hers and smiled. Strong is definitely one word for it. Mark spoke calmly, as if she was just clearing her throat. Before dessert, I'd like to share something. Everyone turned. Thomas squinted. Wait, who are you again? Mark offered her hand. Mark Delaney, forensic accountant. That silenced the entire table. My dad blinked. You're a what? Mark stayed polite. I was hired to conduct an internal investigation on financial irregularities within the company. The table went still. Thomas let out a laugh, tight, forced. This is a joke, right? I finally spoke. Nope, no punchline unless you count your accounting. Mark, open the folder, pass 2 copies forward, one to my dad, one to my mom. Thomas snatched the third. At first, he flipped through the pages like they were homework he forgot to do. Then he froze. My mom leaned in to read over his shoulder. Her smile vanished. My dad looked at the numbers. His face didn't change at first, but his knuckles turned white where they gripped the tablecloth. Mark's voice was calm. These reports include evidence of unauthorized withdrawals, falsified vendor invoices, and transfers into personal accounts. Some of those funds came directly from the company. Others, she looked at. My parents. Came from your retirement fund, my mother gasped. Thomas stood up. I didn't steal anything. My dad's voice was sharp. Sit down, Thomas did, like a kid who'd just been sent to the principal's office. You said you stopped gambling, my mom said. Her voice cracked. I did. I mean, mostly. I had everything under control. You took our retirement money, my dad asked, his voice low. It wasn't like that. I was going to fix it. How, I asked, with magic or monopoly money? Thomas turned to me, red-faced. You had no right. You brought this woman to dinner. You couldn't have handled this privately. I could have, I said, but I wanted everyone to see what happens when you give power to someone just because he was born your sister's son. My dad stood up. You ambushed us. Oh, I'm sorry, I said. Was I supposed to wait for you to call on me like I've been doing for the last 20 years? The shouting started. My mom said I'd humiliated the family. My dad said I'd blindsided them on purpose. Thomas tried to act like the victim, said I'd manipulated them, said I only cared about revenge. I cared about the company. I said about the clients, the employees, the legacy you're so obsessed with. You should have come to us first, my mom said. And what? I asked, gotten a pat on the head and a slice of cake. You wouldn't have believed me. You never do. They didn't deny it. That hurt more than I expected. By the time dessert was served, no one touched it. Mark excused herself professionally. No drama. Just walked out the front door and left me sitting there in the mess. My dad turned to the rest of the table. Party's over. Everyone out. Within 5 minutes, the dining room was empty. Plates half full, glasses smudged, cake untouched. The family celebration was dead. Thomas stormed out the back. No apology, no explanation. My mom sat at the table with her face in her hands. My dad stared at the ceiling like it had answers. Me, I sat there quietly watching them finally realize what I'd known all along. They bet on the wrong child. The morning after the dinner, no one said a word. Not a call, not a message, not a knock on my door. Just silence. You'd think after everything, someone would reach out, maybe to scream, maybe to cry, maybe to say thank you for stopping the company from falling apart. But no, nothing. 3 days later, I got a voicemail from my mother. Her voice was calm, too calm, the kind of calm that means something's about to explode. We've spoken with a legal team. Your father and I have decided to press charges. She didn't mention Thomas by name. We're doing what needs to be done. I sat there listening with my phone in my lap, heart racing, and felt something strange. Hope. Not because I wanted to see my cousin in jail, but because for once it felt like they were seeing him. Clearly, the charges didn't last long, 2 weeks to be exact. Then another voicemail. This one was quieter. Son, we've changed our minds. He's still family. He's agreed to therapy. He's going to get help. No apology, no acknowledgement, just another quiet reminder that he would always get another chance. They didn't ask for my opinion. They didn't ask for help. What they did do was ask Mark to send them a copy of the full report, the one I'd already read cover to cover. They wanted to know how bad it really was. The answer, bad enough. Thomas had drained nearly $500,000, some from company accounts, the rest from the retirement fund he was supposed to help manage. My parents had trusted him with their future. He spent it on online poker and sports bets. And yet somehow, I was still the problem. When I bumped into my mother at the grocery store a few days later, she didn't say hi. She just looked at me, then looked away. I stood there for a moment waiting, hoping maybe she'd say something. She didn't, so I kept walking. Thomas went to therapy, at least that's what they said. He got a job somewhere else, junior management at a friend's company, supposed to help him rebuild. He was also ordered to pay back everything, every cent. Not to me, to my parents. They didn't want the company reputation ruined, so they agreed to settle everything quietly, clean up the mess, bury the headlines. I heard through someone on the board that he was lucky, that if I'd pushed harder, he could have done real time. I hadn't pushed, not because I felt sorry for him, but because I was done wasting energy on people who never saw me. Weeks passed, the company carried on, staggered, but standing, and then came the next twist. I got a call from my dad. He didn't say hello, just we need to talk about the business. I didn't say much, just waited. Eventually, he said the thing I'd always wanted to hear, but somehow it landed flat. You're right. We should have seen it sooner. You were keeping this place together for years. I didn't thank him. Instead, I asked, so what now? There was a pause, then he cleared his throat. We're thinking of bringing someone in, a professional CEO, someone from outside. I blinked. Seriously? Because giving it to your son would be too complicated? It's not about that, he said. But his silence was my answer. That night, I typed up my resignation. No drama, no explanation, just a short email. After 15 years, I was done. I thought it would hurt more. It didn't. In fact, It felt like exhaling after holding my breath for years. I didn't cry. I didn't second guess. I just closed the laptop and poured myself a glass of wine. 2 months later, I started a new job. High-level strategy, better salary, better hours, no glass ceiling hanging over my head like a chandelier waiting to drop. During the interview, the CEO asked why I'd left the family business. I smiled. Family reasons? She laughed. We all have those. My parents didn't call. Thomas definitely didn't. But I didn't need them to. For the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing their approval. I wasn't waiting to be picked. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I was just living my life, finally, without asking permission. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if they'd chosen me first, if they'd believed in me the way they believed in him, if they'd handed me the keys instead of the crumbs. But then I remember, I don't need their crown. I built my own. They gave him everything and he burned it down. They gave me nothing. And I still rose, not for revenge, not for praise, just because I could. And if that makes me the villain in their version of the story, so be it. At least I'm finally living mine. 6 months into my new job, I got a text from my cousin, Emily, the one with the pearls. Are you coming to the family reunion? Everyone's asking. I almost laughed. Everyone wasn't asking. My parents certainly weren't. Thomas definitely wasn't. The last I'd heard, he was still paying back what he'd stolen, one small check at a time. I told Emily I had plans. I didn't, but some boundaries are worth keeping. A year passed, then 2. I got promoted twice. My team respected me. My bosses valued me. When I spoke in meetings, people actually listened. It was a strange feeling at first, being taken seriously without having to fight for it. I dated nothing serious. A few people who saw me clearly from the start, who didn't need me to be anything other than what I was. I made friends who had no connection to my family, no knowledge of our history, people who knew me as I am now, not as the quiet boy who always helped clean up. Then one Tuesday morning, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello? Is this the son of Robert Mercer? A woman's voice, professional, unfamiliar. Yes. I hadn't spoken to my father in over 2 years. I'm calling from Springfield Memorial. Your father had a heart attack this morning. He's stable, but he's asking for you. I sat there for a long moment, phone against my ear, listening to my own heartbeat. I'll be there in an hour. The hospital smelled like every hospital, disinfectant and desperation. My mother was sitting outside his room, looking smaller than I remembered. She didn't stand when she saw me, just watch me approach with those same judging eyes. You came, she said. Not thank you, not, I'm glad you're here, just acknowledgement. How is he alive? Thanks to the paramedics. She looked down at her hands. Thomas is on his way. Of course he was. I nodded and pushed the door open. My father looked old, gray and diminished against the white sheets, tubes everywhere. The machine beside him beeped steadily. He turned his head when the door closed. You came, he said the same words. As my mother, but somehow different. You asked. I stayed by the door. I did. He tried to sit up, winced, settled back. Doctors say I need to avoid stress. I almost smiled. Ironic. I'm selling the company, he said that. I hadn't expected what. Got an offer last month. Good one, from Harding International. I knew the name. Everyone in the industry did. They'd been buying up family businesses for years. You're really selling? He nodded. Should have done it years ago. Before he waved a hand weakly. Before I gave it to your cousin and he nearly destroyed it. Before I lost you. Why are you telling me this? He looked at me directly for what felt like the first time in my life. Because you were right all along and I was too proud to see it. I stood there not knowing what to say. After all this time, all the battles, all the disappointment, I'd finally heard the words I'd wanted for so long, and they meant nothing. Dad. The board agreed yesterday. The deal closes next month. He looked away. Thomas doesn't know yet. I could imagine how that conversation would go. Not well. And Mom, she'll adjust. She always does. He sighed, suddenly looking even older. I messed things up, didn't I, with you? It wasn't really a question, so I didn't answer it. I kept looking at you and seeing he started someone who wasn't Thomas. I finished. He had the decency to look ashamed. Someone who wasn't me. You were quiet, thoughtful, precise. I didn't understand the kind of strength. I almost asked if he understood it now. But what was the point? Some wounds don't need to be reopened. The company is selling for $83 million, he said. After taxes and payouts, there will be about 60 left. I nodded, not sure where this was going. I'm splitting it 3 ways. Your mother, Thomas, and you equal shares. I felt something shift inside me, not gratitude, not vindication, just a quiet recognition that some form of justice, however delayed, was possible. I don't want it, I said. He blinked. What? I don't want your money. It's $20 million. I know he looked genuinely confused. Then, why? Because it's still conditional. It's still you deciding what I deserve, and I don't need that anymore. He started to speak, then stopped. The machine beeped steadily between us. Give it to charity, I said, or keep it. But I've built my own life now. When I left the room, Thomas was coming down the hall. He stopped when he saw me, uncertainty flashing across his face. He looked different, thinner, less cocky. Life without a safety net could do that. How is he? He asked. Stable and full of surprises. Thomas nodded, glanced at the door. Are you staying? No. I've said what I needed to say. I walked past him, past my mother, who had fallen asleep in her chair, past the nurse's station and out into the bright afternoon light. My phone buzzed, my team checking in, wondering where I was, if everything was okay. I texted back that I'd be in tomorrow, that family stuff had come up. Family stuff. Such a simple phrase for such a complicated thing. 3 days later, my father was released from the hospital. I sent flowers, but didn't visit again. 2 weeks after that, I got an email from him, formal, stiff, but sincere. He'd respected my decision about the money but hoped I might reconsider, not for his sake, he wrote, but because it might give me options. Options, the one thing they'd never wanted me to have. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I sat with the idea for a while. $20 million freedom money, the kind of capital that could launch something new. A month later, I met with him and my mother at a restaurant halfway between our homes, neutral territory. They looked uncomfortable, in that way people do when they're trying to be on their best behavior. I've been thinking about your offer, I said. After we'd ordered, my father nodded. My mother watched me carefully. I'll accept it with one condition. My father leaned forward. Name it. I don't want it as a gift or an inheritance. I want to use it to start my own company, and I want you both to be silent partners. No input, no opinions, just faith. My mother started to speak, but my father put his hand over hers. Okay, he said simply. And that was how Meridian Consulting was born. My company, my vision, my rules. I hired Mark Delaney as my CFO, the forensic accountant who'd helped expose Thomas. She smiled when I offered her the job. I knew you'd land on your feet, she said. Better than that, I told her. I landed exactly where I was always meant to be. We grew fast, faster than I'd expected. Within 2 years, we had 50 employees and clients in 3 countries. I developed a reputation for integrity, transparency, and results. People sought us out. People trusted us. My parents came to the office opening, stood awkwardly near the food table trying to look like they belonged. Thomas didn't come. I heard he'd finally paid back what he took and was working at a mid-level management job somewhere in the city. I didn't check up on him. This is impressive, my father said, looking around at the modern open workspace. Thank you, I replied, not for the approval, but for the acknowledgement. I'm sorry, he said quietly, for not seeing it sooner. I nodded. Some apologies come too late to heal the original wound, but can still help close it. Would you like a tour? I asked. He nodded. As we walked through the office, employees greeted me warmly, many by first name. My team was diverse, energetic, collaborative, everything I'd tried to bring to the family business and had been shut down. You've built something special here, my father said as we finished the tour. I have. I wish he started. Then shook his head. I know, I said. and I did. He wished he'd seen it sooner, wished he'd believed in me earlier, wished he could go back and make different choices. But that's not how life works. We get one run at each day, each choice. The best we can do is learn and move forward. 5 years later, Meridian was featured in Business Weekly as one of the fastest-growing consulting firms in the country. My father framed the article and hung it in his study. I know because my mother told me during one of our occasional lunches. We weren't close, but we were civil. Sometimes that's enough. Thomas and I ran into each other at a professional conference in Denver. He was representing his company. I was giving the keynote address. He approached me after my speech looking nervous. "That was really good," he said. "Thanks." I waited, curious what he really wanted. "I've been in therapy," he blurted out for a while now. "Good for you. I'm trying to make amends for everything." I studied him. He seemed sincere, older, more grounded, less like the entitled boy who'd been handed everything and destroyed it. "I appreciate that," I said. And I did. Growth is hard. Facing your failures is harder. "I know we can't go back to how things were," he said. "But maybe we could have coffee sometime." I finished for him. Not his family, just his people. He nodded, relief clear on his face. "I'd like that." We did have that coffee 3 months later. It was awkward and stilted, but not hostile. We talked about work, about the industry, about neutral things. We didn't discuss the past. Some bridges can't be rebuilt, but new, smaller ones can be constructed in their place. Last month, my team landed the biggest client in our company's history, a multinational looking to restructure their entire operation. The contract was worth more than the company my father had sold, the company Thomas had nearly bankrupted, the company I'd been told I wasn't built to lead. I didn't call my parents to share the news, didn't need their validation anymore. But I did allow myself a moment of quiet satisfaction, not because I'd proven them wrong, though I had, but because I'd proven myself right. Some people spend their whole lives seeking approval from those who will never give it. Others waste years trying to become what someone else wants them to be. I'd done both, but not anymore. Now I just build, create, lead on my own terms. And if you've ever been the overlooked one, the underestimated one, the one they never believed in, maybe that's your real advantage. Because when no one expects you to fly, they never think to clip your wings. Story 2. I wasn't invited to any of my siblings' weddings, so I decided not to invite them to mine. I have 4 older siblings, all of whom are married. None of them invited me to their weddings because each one chose to have a ceremony without children. I thought I might be the exception since I'm their brother. But the first one to get married was my older sister, Leonarda. Her wedding was child-free, and the others followed her lead. When Leonarda got married, I was 10, so I understood why I wasn't invited, but I was still very upset. She married a man I liked, and I wasn't even there to see it. My next sister, Fernanda, got married when I was 12. Again, I wasn't invited, but I still didn't mind much because I was a well-behaved child. My brother Bernardo got married when I was 15. At first, he didn't want a child-free wedding, but the family convinced him to exclude all kids because it was easier. When I asked him to make an exception for me since I was 15, he said no. He said it wouldn't be fair to the other children. I was upset and yelled at him that it wasn't fair that I couldn't attend any of my siblings' weddings. My parents got mad at me and grounded me for 6 months. Finally, my youngest sister, Gustava, got married when I was 17. By then, I didn't care anymore because I knew it would be another child-free wedding and I'd be excluded. And I was right. I didn't ask about it, and my cousin, who had just turned 18, was invited, but I wasn't. I didn't care, so I just sent a short message to congratulate her and ignored everything else. My parents got mad because I didn't congratulate them properly. I ignored them and spent all my time in my room with my fiancé. Now that I'm getting married, I decided not to invite any of my siblings to my wedding, since they didn't invite me to theirs. When they realized they weren't invited, they started asking questions in the family group chat. Bernardo asked if there was a problem with the mail, and Fernanda directly asked why she didn't get an invitation. I just read the messages and ignored them. I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of a quick response. The next day, my mom called. As soon as I answered, she immediately started asking why I didn't invite my siblings, sounding angry like I had done something wrong. I took a deep breath and calmly told her they didn't invite me to their weddings, so I thought it was fair to return the favor. There was silence on the other end of the phone as she tried to understand what I said. Then she exploded. She asked if my fiancé had influenced me, saying I was always so sweet, but now I seem like a stranger. I almost laughed nervously, because, as usual, my mom blamed someone else instead of accepting that I might be right. I told her, "It's not about her, Mom. This is my decision. They never made me feel important enough to include me in their most special moments, so I don't see why they should be at mine." She hung up on me, which was typical. The next day, the messages kept coming. Leonarda sent me a dramatic message saying, "Mario, I know you felt hurt about not being invited to my wedding, but you were just a child. It wasn't personal. I thought you would have gotten over it by now." How could she say that? They ignored me during all the important moments of their lives, and now they expected me to just get over it. I replied, "It's not about getting over it. It's about what's fair. If I wasn't important enough to be at their weddings, why should they be at mine?" It seemed fair to me. Her reply came quickly, and it was even more ridiculous. She called me a spoiled brat and said that family should always come before resentment. Now they wanted to pretend we were a close family. But where was that closeness when I was a little boy begging to go to their weddings? Things got worse when my parents decided to have an intervention. They showed up at my house without warning, thinking they could change my mind as soon as they started talking. It was clear they cared more about what people would think than about me. My mom said, "What will people think of us, Mario? What kind of person doesn't invite their own siblings to their wedding?" She spoke like I'd done something terrible. I tried to explain again that this was about all the years of ignoring me, but my dad interrupted, calling me childish and selfish. That's when I lost my patience. I said, "Childish and selfish?" I was a child when I begged to go to their weddings, and everyone said I was dramatic. Now, as an adult, they want to pretend that never happened. I'm sorry, but I'm not changing my mind. They're not coming to my wedding, and if you keep treating me like this, neither will you. The room went silent. My mom looked like she might faint, and my dad turned bright red. Without saying anything else, they left and slammed the door. In the weeks that followed, they called me spiteful and ungrateful. My siblings tried to make me feel guilty, saying I was ruining the family. Bernardo even tried to appeal emotionally, saying my nieces were excited about the wedding and it would be cruel to leave them out. This time, I ignored them. On my wedding day, I felt a huge sense of relief. The ceremony was exactly how I wanted it. Light, full of love, and surrounded by people who truly cared about me as I danced with my wife. I thought about how, for the first time, I had control over my life. Later, I found out that my mom had organized a separate dinner for my siblings on the same day. As a kind of silent protest, I found it pathetic. They could comfort themselves however they wanted, but it wouldn't change the fact that for the first time, I had stood up for myself, and that was liberating. After the wedding, I thought everything would settle down. It felt like a turning point in my life. The flowers, the music, the food, and the people there were perfect. All surrounded by genuine love. I didn't feel the absence of anyone, but as always, peace didn't last. A few days later, the comments started. First, there were indirect remarks in the family group chat. Bernardo was the first, saying, "We saw some pictures of your wedding. Why did those flowers look so basic?" I tried to ignore it, but it started to irritate me. Then Fernanda added, "And the venue? I don't know. It looked more like an impromptu party than a wedding. You could have asked us for help. Didn't she know? I had blocked everyone from my social media. How had they seen the photos? It turned out they got them through mutual friends, which bothered me even more. Not only had they invaded a moment I had deliberately excluded them from, but they were also criticizing something they hadn't even experienced. I took a deep breath and forced myself not to respond. But it was hard. The last straw came when my mom called. She didn't waste any time with small talk. When I answered the phone, my mom immediately started criticizing me. "Mario, what was that wedding? I saw the pictures and honestly, I expected more from you. Everything looked so simple. Nothing like your siblings. Weddings that suit you deserve something more glamorous. Why didn't you have it in a church? Your brother had something much nicer. That wedding didn't seem worthy of our family. For a moment, I was speechless. Not because I agreed, but because I was shocked by how rude she was. I tried not to explode, and when I finally spoke, my voice was cold. Mom, the only thing that wasn't worthy here was you. You weren't even invited, yet you feel entitled to criticize? You saw pictures of something you shouldn't have seen. If you didn't like it, fine, because I didn't plan anything to please you. She got angry, but didn't back down. You're being so selfish, Mario. Really? Do you think you can just cut us out of your life? That's not normal. You've always been resentful, and now you're taking it out on us? What did we do to deserve this? That was the last straw. I couldn't stay calm anymore. What did you do? Let's refresh our memories. Mom, you ignored me during the most important moments of my life. I was never important enough to be at my own siblings' weddings. But now you expect me to include you in mine as if nothing happened? That's hypocrisy. And the most ironic thing, the only thing that could have ruined my wedding was inviting you. There was silence on the phone. I thought maybe she'd finally understood, but no. She took a deep breath and said with contempt, "You're ungrateful. We did everything for you, and this is how you repay us? You're abandoning your family for a woman who barely just came into your life. You'll regret this." I hung up before she could say more. I was tired of arguing with someone who would never admit their mistakes. But the drama didn't stop there. My siblings, clearly encouraged by my mom, started sending me non-stop messages in the family group chat. Bernardo wrote, "You've destroyed the family, Mario. Congratulations on pushing away everyone who ever loved you. Fernanda, as always, made a show of it. I hope the wife you chose is worth it, because you've lost everything for her." I read everything silently while my wife watched, knowing it hurt me, but not wanting to get involved. After a few minutes, I left the group chat without replying. It wasn't worth it. The next days were full of private messages and calls, all of which I ignored. My mom even showed up at my door unannounced, but I didn't let her in. "Mom, there's no point. You only know how to criticize and belittle me. I don't want any more of that in my life," she yelled from outside. "Family is forever, Mario. You can't just eliminate us because you're hurt." I opened the door just enough to reply. Family should mean support, respect, and love, not manipulation and constant criticism. If that's all you have to offer, then yes, I can eliminate you from my life. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. I closed the door while she kept yelling, but I didn't pay attention. I had already made my decision. Since then, I've cut off all contact with them. The few times they tried to reach out, it was with more accusations and criticism. But I no longer had the patience for it. Now, my life is focused on me and my wife. We've built a relationship based on respect and love, everything my family never gave me. Looking back, I know walking away was the best decision. I don't miss anything, and I don't feel guilty. I'm finally at peace, living a happy life, and knowing I don't owe anything to people who never truly valued me. My life is calmer and happier than I ever imagined it could be. Since I cut off contact with my family, I feel like I can finally breathe. My wife and I are focused on building a solid life based on love and respect, something I never had with my family. Recently, something very special happened. We found out my wife is pregnant. It was an amazing moment when we saw the positive result. Tears filled my eyes, and my wife hugged me tightly, saying, "We're going to raise this baby with so much love that they'll never want for anything." From the start, we knew our child would only be surrounded by people who truly cared for them, which meant my family had no place in their life. However, as always, news travels fast. I'm not sure how they found out, maybe through a distant relative or a mutual acquaintance. But soon I started receiving messages. The first one was from my mom. "Mario, I heard about the baby. I want you to know that despite everything, we're your family. And it's important for the baby to have their grandparents around." I didn't reply. My wife and I had already decided that they wouldn't have any contact with our child. It wasn't because I wanted to be cruel, but because I couldn't risk exposing my child to the same toxic behavior I had endured all my life. After my mom's message, my siblings started messaging too. Bernardo, as usual, tried to manipulate me. "Congratulations on the baby, Mario. Despite all the fights, We're siblings, and I know you'll need support. We're here for you and the baby. Fernanda, of course, was more direct. Hold on to your grudge if you want, but at least let us meet our niece or nephew. They deserve to know they have a big family. I read everything in silence, while my wife, as always, stood by my side. She took my hand and said, "You don't have to reply. You don't owe them anything. This is our moment, and we only need those who truly care about us." She was right. The following week, my mom showed up at our house unannounced. When I opened the door and saw her with an expression that seemed like regret, my heart clenched for a moment, but I didn't let it affect me. Before she could say anything, I was direct. "Mom, don't insist. You're not a part of my life, and you won't be a part of my child's life either." She tried to argue. "Mario, you can't do this. We're your family. This baby is part of us too." I replied firmly, "I'm not going to let my child go through what I went through. I want them to grow up surrounded by true love, without manipulation, without criticism, without emotional games. That's something you and the others never knew how to offer." She started to cry, but I knew those tears weren't real regret. They were because she wasn't getting what she wanted. Before she could continue, I closed the door. It was painful, but it was necessary. Since then, the messages and attempts at contact have continued, but they no longer affect me. My focus now is on my wife's pregnancy and our baby. We're planning everything with so much love and care, and I can't wait to start this new chapter of our lives. Some might say it's selfish to keep my family away from the baby, but for me, this is about protection. I won't allow any toxic influence near my child. Today, I am at peace with my decision. I know my child will grow up in a safe and loving home, and that's all that matters. My family can keep blaming me and saying I'm wrong, but I don't care anymore. For the first time, I have control over my life and the life we're bringing into the world, and that is freeing. As my wife's pregnancy progressed, we created a peaceful bubble around ourselves. Our home became a sanctuary of joy and anticipation. We painted the nursery together, chose furniture, and spent evenings reading parenting books. Everything was perfect, until my sister Lenarta somehow got our new address. One day a large package arrived. Inside was an expensive baby bassinet with a note for my future niece or nephew. Family heirloom should be passed down. Lenarta, my wife, found me staring at it, hand shaking. Without a word, she helped me pack it back up. We donated it to a local women's shelter the same day. But Lenarta's gift opened the floodgates. Soon, packages started arriving from all my siblings. Fernanda sent designer baby clothes. Bernardo shipped a handmade rocking chair that he claimed took him months to craft. Gustavo mailed photo albums of our childhood, filled with sticky notes pointing out happy family memories I should remember. Each gift felt like a weapon, carefully chosen to pierce through the walls I'd built. My wife noticed how each package affected me, how I'd grow quiet and distant. One evening, after a particularly difficult day, when my mom had sent a box full of my own baby things, my wife sat me down. "They're trying to buy their way back into our lives," she said softly, her hand resting on her growing belly. "But we don't owe them access to our child just because they're sending gifts." She was right, of course. That night, we drafted a formal cease and desist letter with help from our lawyer. It felt extreme, but necessary. The gifts stopped, but the emotional warfare continued through other channels. My siblings started a social media campaign, sharing old family photos and writing long posts about family healing and forgiveness. They tagged mutual friends, trying to pressure me through our social circle. Some distant relatives I barely knew started messaging me about doing the right thing. The final straw came during my wife's baby shower. We'd carefully planned it with our chosen family, close friends who'd supported us through everything. But halfway through the celebration, my mom and sister showed up uninvited, carrying more gifts and wearing sad, martyred expressions. I saw my wife's face tighten with anxiety, watched our friends shift uncomfortably before they could make a scene. I met them at the door. "This is a private event," I said firmly. "You need to leave." "We're family," my mom protested, trying to push past me. "You can't keep us from celebrating our grandchild." "This isn't your grandchild," I replied, my voice steady despite my racing heart. You lost that privilege when you chose to treat me like a stranger for most of my life. Security will escort you out if necessary. Leonardo tried emotional manipulation one last time. Mario, please. We've all made mistakes. When you become a parent, you'll understand the importance of family. No, I said, feeling stronger than ever. When I become a parent, I'll understand how crucial it is to protect my child from toxic relationships, even if they're family, especially if they're family. They left, but not before making sure everyone heard their tearful protests. Later, my wife squeezed my hand and whispered, "You did the right thing." Our true friends rallied around us, sharing stories of their own experiences with family boundaries, making us feel less alone. The months that followed were peaceful. We took birthing classes, prepared our home, and focused on the joy of becoming parents. My wife's pregnancy progressed beautifully, and watching her grow with our child filled me with more love than I'd ever known. When she went into labor, we had our birth plan ready. The hospital staff knew exactly who was allowed in, and more importantly, who wasn't. My wife's parents, who had always respected our boundaries and shown us genuine love, were our only family support. Our son was born on a crisp autumn morning, perfect and healthy, with 10 tiny fingers and 10 tiny toes. As I held him for the first time, looking into his curious eyes, I made a silent promise. He would never know the pain of exclusion, the sting of conditional love, or the weight of family manipulation. The messages started pouring in as soon as word got out. Congratulations mixed with guilt trips, joy tainted with manipulation. Bernardo sent a particularly nasty text. "Your son will grow up ashamed of how you've torn this family apart." I looked at my newborn son sleeping peacefully in my wife's arms and felt nothing but certainty. He would grow up surrounded by authentic love, not the performance of family loyalty my siblings had perfected. As weeks passed, we settled into life with our baby. Every milestone was celebrated by people who genuinely cared for us. His first smile, first laugh, first time rolling over, all witnessed by our chosen family, who showed up with food, help, and unconditional support. When he was 3 months old, my mom made one final attempt. She appeared at our door, clutching a handmade blanket and crying, "Please, Mario, let me hold my grandson just once. I'm his grandmother." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the same woman who had dismissed my pain for years, who had chosen appearances over love, who had never once apologized for the real hurt she'd caused. "No, Mom," I said gently. "You're not his grandmother. You're just the woman who taught me exactly what kind of parent I don't want to be." She left the blanket on our doorstep. We donated it like all the other gifts and continued building our life. Our son is 6 months old now, thriving in an environment of consistent love and respect. He'll never know the pain of being the excluded child, the family afterthought. Sometimes friends ask if I worry about him missing out on extended family. I look at our home, filled with photos of the people who choose to love us properly. Friends who became family, my wife's parents who show up with respect and joy, neighbors who bring casseroles and genuine care. He's not missing anything, I tell them. He's surrounded by real family. Last week we received an invitation to Leonardo's daughter's wedding. It was clearly a peace offering, an attempt to bridge the gap. My wife found me looking at it, lost in thought. "What are you thinking?" she asked, our son babbling happily in her arms. I took the invitation and dropped it in the recycling bin. "I'm thinking about cycles," I said, reaching for our boy, and how proud I am that we broke them. She smiled, understanding completely. Our son will grow up knowing his worth isn't measured by family name or tradition, but by the authentic connections he builds. He'll learn that love shouldn't come with conditions, that family is earned through actions, not claimed through blood. As I write this, he's sleeping peacefully in his crib, surrounded by the drawings and photos of people who love him unconditionally. There are no family heirlooms in his room, no antique furniture weighed down by obligation. Instead, every item was chosen with care and joy by people who have proven their love through respect and understanding. The journey hasn't been easy, but it has been worth it. Every time I look at my son's innocent face, I know we made the right choice. He will grow up free from the burden of toxic family dynamics, free to choose his own path, free to understand that love should lift you up, not weigh you down. And that's the greatest gift I could give him. The freedom to be loved exactly as he is by people who know how to love properly. Story 3. My wife abandoned our family to join a no-relationships-allowed cult with her friends, and years later she came back expecting to be welcomed with open arms. I, a 29-year-old male, got married 6 years ago, but have been divorced for 3 years now. I have 2 daughters with my ex-wife Amanda, 30, who are now aged 4 and 5. I have full custody of them since Amanda didn't want to be bogged down by family responsibilities. We were happily married for 3 years, had 2 beautiful kids, and were even planning on buying a house so we could move out of the apartment we lived in when she suddenly hit me with, "I want to be single and explore the world right now." We had been together since high school, so we were all we knew. I was her first everything and she was mine, so I always assumed we were in it together forever. She seemed fine with not having been with other people. But after 3 years of marriage, she told me she wasn't happy and wanted both of us to be free of the burden our marriage and family so we could live life to the fullest. It was all weird free thinker talk like my mom would refer to it, and I didn't understand any of it because I thought she loved me. She insisted she did love me, but also said she loved herself and wanted to give herself a fair chance to explore the world. I even suggested opening our marriage temporarily, no matter how much it hurt me, just to make sure she stayed married to me and didn't actually leave. But she wasn't into that idea and was hell-bent on getting divorced so we could both do this the right way. I was heartbroken after that conversation because it came out of nowhere. When I started crying in front of her, she told me that everything would be fine and to have faith in our love because if we were meant to be, she'd find her way back. It was ridiculous and unfair, but that's how our marriage ended. One day she decided to pack her bags and leave so she could explore the world and be on her own for a while, leaving me and our 2 kids behind without giving a damn about what would happen to us. I even asked what she thought would happen to the kids, and she suggested I leave them with someone I trust, and I should go explore the world to travel, meet new people, and live a generally adventurous life so I could grow. I was stunned. As far as I'm concerned, if we bring kids into the world, it's our responsibility to raise them well, protect them, and meet their needs. As a parent, you can't just run off to travel the world and leave your kids behind. And that's what convinced me she was completely off her rocker. So I didn't fight the divorce anymore. I didn't contest it. The settlement was easy since she didn't want anything and was ready to give it all up. Her parents were wealthy, so the alimony and child support weren't a big issue either. She got visitation rights, but she rarely visited. And even when she would, she'd make me drop the daughters off at her parents' place and then wait in another room so she could meet them without being reminded of the past. But even those visits stopped after the first couple of months. I found out the real reason behind the change in her behavior much later from a friend of mine, Richard, who happened to have a couple of friends in common with Amanda. Richard's cousin happened to be part of the friend circle that Amanda had been influenced by, and he's the one who told me about them about 2 months after the divorce. I don't blame him for not telling me earlier because he and his cousin weren't exactly close, so he hadn't found out the truth until after the divorce was done. Besides, even if I did know the truth, it wouldn't have changed anything about the divorce anyway. According to what Richard told me, his cousin led a very promiscuous, wild, and adventurous lifestyle. Not just him, but his entire friend group of about 6 or 7 women believed that they shouldn't be tied down by relationships, and it made a pact to remain single. Amanda had been introduced to this friend's circle by a coworker of hers who believed that she'd get along well with these women, even though she wasn't single and couldn't be part of that school of thought, given that she was married with 2 kids at that point. But Richard's cousin had bragged to him and a couple of other family members that they'd managed to convert a woman into believing that she didn't need to stay with her husband and kids, that she apparently needed to shed this dead weight so she could move on and do better in life. And that's what she'd done by divorcing her husband and giving up custody of her kids so she could finally fully commit to their ideology. She'd been bragging about the success of their group and how they'd managed to turn someone into one of them, which meant that there was definitely something powerful and compelling about their beliefs. So Richard, out of curiosity, asked his cousin what this woman looked like because he wanted to know what kind of woman would just abandon her family because of what her new friend said, especially a married woman with 2 kids. Then, when his cousin pointed to Amanda in a group photo they taken, he put 2 and 2 together and texted me about it as soon as he left the event. This had all taken place at a family gathering of his, and once that was done, he immediately asked if I was willing to meet him. Thankfully, I'd said yes. So he rushed over to my apartment and spilled the beans on what had happened with Amanda. To say I was furious would be an understatement. When I learned the real reason behind my wife's decision to leave, she'd done this to fit into some stupid group and to be seen as a person who was brave and adventurous and all that. She'd left her husband and kids behind for something like that. When I learned the real reason behind her ridiculous behavior, I honestly felt like I would have been happier if she had just slept with another man. At least it would have been a more respectable reason to end our marriage and abandon her children. But this just didn't cut it. I wanted to call her and curse her out, but didn't because after learning the real reason for her departure, I was convinced that she was just crazy. There were no 2 ways about it. And there was also no point in hoping that maybe saying or doing something would make her change her mind. It wouldn't. And I knew that now. So I just decided to make the best of my circumstances and raise my daughters to be better women than their mother had been. I also worked harder at my own job and made sure they never felt abandoned. I hired a nanny and started working. Twice as hard at the office so I wouldn't have to bring the office home with me. And as soon as I'd come back home, all my time would be spent with my daughters. My parents helped out a lot and occasionally even my in-laws tried to help, but kept it to a minimum, probably out of shame for what their daughter had done. They were the ones who were paying the child support installments every month. And I knew it, because from what I'd heard, Amanda was busy blowing all her money on trips to exotic locations at high-end hotels. Now that she had no family to think of, she could spend all her money on crap like that, and nobody would bat an eye. I raised my kids to the best of my abilities, and now I have 2 sweet, obedient, and adorable little girls who love me and each other. We're all the family we need. And I've pretty much pushed my marriage out of my mind altogether, because that was just annoying to think of. I've also paid my dues at work. So now I'm in a great position and earn double the amount I used to before. I've been doing great for the last 2 years, and I didn't think that I had anything to worry about anymore until last week, when Amanda finally showed up after almost 3 years of being completely a wall. My kids and I were at home since it was a Sunday. We have enough money to buy our own house now, but I've stayed in the same apartment since I really love this place, and it's convenient for the commute to work as well. Clearly, I should have moved because, unfortunately, since I'd remained in the same place, Amanda knew where to find me. She just showed up at our door randomly that day. And I think it must have knocked the wind out of me to see her after almost 3 years. Neither of us said anything for the first couple of seconds, but I took in her appearance, the crazy big bouquet of red roses she was holding, and the way she was smiling with tears in her eyes. Call me heartless, but I didn't feel moved or emotional. I just felt pure hatred for her. And before she could say anything, I slammed the door shut with such force that I swear I felt the floorboard shake. I told my kids to go inside because I knew she was going to try and convince me of something or the other, and I wasn't going to keep it at peace. All the hatred, hurt, and anger were bubbling up, and I didn't want my kids to see whatever ugly fight was about to happen next. Sure enough, as soon as I told my kids to leave, Amanda started whining about how this wasn't the welcome back that she'd been expecting. I could hear that she was trying hard not to cry, but really all that did was just aggravate me even more. She was the one who'd put me through all this crap for years, and now she had the audacity to cry and act like the victim. She then went on to tell me that she'd come back to apologize and to say that she was sorry for all that she'd done in the past, but now she just wanted her old life back. I was shocked, but I let her go on because a part of me wanted to hear this apology, or whatever it was supposed to be, because it had been 3 years, and I'd never had any sort of closure. I put it out of my mind. But seeing her again had brought it all back. And I guess in some sick way, I was really relishing the opportunity to show her her place, just so she would know that we were all better off without her, and nobody missed her in her absence. She went on for a couple of minutes about how she'd had her fun in these past couple of years, but at the end of the day, she'd just feel empty, because she had nobody to come home to except for empty hotel rooms. She confessed that she'd been feeling like she was missing something for the last couple of months, and she'd finally made the very difficult decision of coming back and apologizing now, so she could finally make amends. Apparently, the high of traveling and exploring life with her new group of friends had worn off after the first few months, but she continued to stick to that lifestyle because she was too afraid to come back. She felt like since she'd sacrificed a lot for that life, she had to fully commit to it. But now she couldn't imagine going back and just wanted her old life back. The more she talked, the more I felt like opening the door and punching her in her stupid face as hard as I could. I couldn't tolerate any more of her BS, so I told her to just leave us alone and that I didn't want to see her or talk to her at the moment. But Amanda, being Amanda, believed that she could change my mind by continuing to ramble on, standing outside the door and begging me to come back to her. After a point, it started getting on my nerves, and I also had to bring the kids out of their room so I could serve them dinner. I just hit the door and yelled out that we're not her family anymore, so she needed to go away. Now, I think that took her in shock because after that, I didn't hear her anymore. As soon as I'd given the kids their dinner, I called my attorney and told him everything that had happened just to be on the safe side. Then I called my parents and told them about Amanda's visit, whatever she had said, and then what I'd said. They reassured me that I'd done the right thing given the circumstances, and that I had nothing to worry about. I didn't call my in-laws because I didn't know what to say to them about any of this, and I'm sure they'd find out later from their daughter anyway. But as soon as I was done with those calls, I received a call from Richard, and since he'd been the one to inform me about the real reason why Amanda had left all those years ago, I answered the call because I had a feeling he'd tell me something about Amanda. And I was right, since as soon as I answered the call, he asked me if Amanda had come around. And when I said yes, he told me that his cousin had called him up to inform him why. Richard and I are really close friends and have always been, even apart from the situation with Amanda, where he's been a major source of information for me regarding her, thanks to his cousin. After he told me about whatever his cousin had told him all those years ago, he told his cousin that if there was anything he found out about Amanda, he was supposed to come straight to him, since I was the one she'd screwed over when his cousin found out about me. I guess he stopped feeling very proud of himself about converting Amanda, but I don't blame him. I blame Amanda for being so easy to influence. His cousin had promised us that he'd keep us updated on her, and had even reached out to apologize to me one time after he learned about me. I'd forgiven him since I never had anything against the guy, but we're not friends or anything. She'd tell Richard what Amanda was up to, which is how I knew what she'd been up to since she blocked me after the divorce. And so now Richard's cousin had contacted him to tell him the truth about why exactly Amanda had returned, and he then passed on the information to me. Their friend circle had a group text ever since they all met each other, and a couple of hours before Amanda showed up at my door, she'd sent a text to the group telling everyone about what she was about to do. The girls had been supportive, but Amanda had apparently lashed out at them for their fake support. She told all the other girls that she felt cheated by them since she left her entire life behind, but they betrayed her by getting into relationships over the years, and now she was the only fool who'd left her husband and kids behind to travel and have fun with her girls. The other girls, who were now all dating, by the way, told her that it wasn't fair to expect that they'd always stick to one school of thought for their entire life, especially when they come up with that ideology about not being tied down and stuff back when they were in their mid-20s and were still relatively young. But right now, most of the girls were pushing 30 and didn't want that lifestyle anymore. In fact, a couple of the girls were already in serious committed relationships that had already lasted more than a year, and one of them was even engaged. So all that they talked a big game about back in the day had just been thrown straight out of the window, and the only person suffering now was Amanda, since she'd been the only girl stupid enough to buy into whatever rubbish these girls were spewing. Amanda then got into a huge fight with these girls because these were the same people who had actually congratulated her when she left me. And now they were all trying to get a taste of the life that she left behind on purpose, even though the girls were still being supportive. Now, when she told them that she wanted to go back to her old life, it wasn't enough for her, and she wanted them to apologize for making her leave her husband and her kids. That's what their fight was about. And the other girls refused to apologize, and rightfully so. They just told her about their beliefs, but they'd never said that she needed to leave us to be part of their circle. She'd have to give up any ideas of going around the world with them and having the kind of fun they did since she had responsibilities at home and had to think of me and her kids. But she could have still remained friends with them. They'd never given her any ultimatum or whatever. But it had been her own personal choice to abandon us all for the life she thought she wanted just so she could fit in. And she was doing the same thing yet again. Now that most of the girls were in relationships, she felt the pressure to fit in yet again. And that's why she'd come back to us, not out of any sense of duty or because she felt empty, like she told me. Maybe that could have been part of the reason, but it wasn't the whole reason. And when I heard about all of this from Richard, my blood boiled because I'd felt a little guilty for turning her away. And that's why I had to call my parents for reassurance. Had I known these things before she came by, then she would have really received the bashing of a lifetime from me. But Richard's cousin had been extremely busy with work at the time. All these things were being discussed in their group text, and he hadn't checked his phone, so he didn't know. When he did find out, after work, he told Richard about it as soon as he could, and then Richard called me to tell me about it. So I ended up finding out after Amanda had already visited and we talked. However, now that I knew what she was really here for, I also made up my mind that I wouldn't let her come back at any cost, and neither would I feel bad about it. She'd never ever felt bad about the things that she'd done and put me and her kids through, so I didn't see the need for me to feel so guilty about it either. She was just a terrible person, period, and this was the way it was going to be. So I steeled myself for her next attempt to try and come back, but it never happened. For the next couple of days, I didn't hear from her. And even though I told Richard to ask his cousin about her, he told me that he had no idea what Amanda had been up to either, since she blocked all the guys from the group after that fight. Even Richard's cousin had been blocked in spite of the fact that he had nothing to do with the fight and hadn't even known about it until later. It was a bigger issue for me now since if Richard's cousin was blocked, it meant that I'd have no way of being in the loop regarding what she was going to do next. Amanda was the kind of girl who discusses something as small and insignificant as buying a shoe with other people before she actually goes through with it. So of course, she'd discuss everything with her friends before actually doing anything. But now that Richard's cousin was blocked, I had no way of knowing anything. So naturally, when my in-laws called me 3 days ago, I was caught completely off guard and didn't know what to expect. They told me that they were calling to discuss what I'd said to Amanda the other day when she'd come to visit me and make things right with me. I told them that I didn't want her back, and it was just as simple as that. But they went on to tell me that they'd continue to pay child support and had made sure that their grandkids grew up well. So I had no right to say that this wasn't her family anymore. We got into a verbal spat over it because they were actually defending her, and then I ended up hanging up on them. I've been thinking about it, but I can't even begin to fathom how exactly I'm in the wrong here. I just don't think that's the case. But my in-laws were right that they'd held up their end of the agreement, and Amanda still has visitation rights. She's just not used them in a while. I don't understand what to do right now. On one hand, I really do wish for my kids to have a mother, even though I know I'm enough for them at the moment, but I don't want to deprive her of anything. I don't even know if it's legally my place yet. I just can't figure out what to do right now. And my kids are honestly all that I'm thinking of at the moment, for telling my ex-wife that my kids and I are not her family anymore after she left us behind for 3 years. Update 1. Hi. Thank you for all the comments and help. I've decided that I'm going to appeal and get the custody arrangement changed so she doesn't have visitation rights either. I don't know if I'll succeed or not, but it's worth a try. It's been 2 days since I posted here, and that's the advice that most of you guys had for me. So I'm doing that, and my parents agree with it too. Paying child support just meant that Amanda and her parents had held up the legal end of the arrangement, but everything else was all me. I'd raise my kids while she had her fun with the girls. She doesn't get to pick and choose when she can be a part of our lives and be with us on her terms. Update 2. I filed for termination of Amanda's parental rights earlier today, and I really regret not having done so sooner. I should have done it as soon as she stopped coming around to see the kids after the first couple of months when she left us the first time. But, oh well, better late than never. A lot of people here had a lot to say about me making this move, but I take my words back about not depriving my kids of a mother. They never had a present mom in the first place, and there's no telling if Amanda might want to take off someday again. She was absent for 3 years, so now she can take a permanent leave from being a parent and go do whatever it is that she wants to do, but not at the cost of my emotions or my kids' well-being. That's not okay with me. And I really don't think I'm depriving my kids of anything at all, since they never had a mother anyway. So it's not like they're going to miss her. Update 3. So I didn't manage to get her rights terminated altogether, but at least now she can only meet the kids as long as the visits are supervised by me. At least that's something. And she can't just push us around anymore. If she can prove to the court that she's capable and fit to be a consistent mother, then maybe we can renegotiate this arrangement sometime. But as of now, this is the best that she can get out of us. As for me, she's not getting back with me. Ever. And that's non-negotiable. After the court hearing, when she tried to talk to me again, I snapped at her and finally told her that I knew all about her pathetic need to fit in with her friends and told her that she could go marry them instead because I'm done. And if she wasn't the mother of my kids, then I probably wouldn't even have spit on someone like her. I walked off with the kids and left her and her parents staring at me open-mouthed, which was pretty damn satisfying. Anyway, that's how it is now. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm glad that this all worked out well for the children. At least they're my only concern. So now, if Amanda can become a responsible mother and finally step up as a mom, then maybe my kids won't have to go through life without a mom, and maybe they won't have to learn to shave from online tutorials. But if she tries anything even remotely funny ever again, then she'll have hell to pay for it. She's messed with my head enough as it is, but she's not going to put our kids through anything of the sort except endure. Story 4. My mother-in-law entered my room a week before the wedding and tried to ruin my wedding dress to teach me a lesson. However, she didn't know that everything was being recorded. Her reaction when the video was played in front of 200 guests at the wedding was unforgettable. I, 30, female, got engaged to my boyfriend, 26, male, of 3 years, about 6 months back. We've been living together for 2 years and it just felt like the time was right, so I said yes. My fiancé is the sole heir to his father's company. They are the owners of a really reputable shipping company and are loaded, which I didn't even find out about until after. I've been seeing my fiancé for a month already. I'm mentioning this so that you guys know I was never in this for the money at all. And I'm certainly not a gold digger. As a matter of fact, I myself make a decent living as a flight attendant. I met my fiancé at a gig where he asked me out as soon as I served him his coffee. And even though I was hesitant to say yes because he looked significantly younger than me, I ended up agreeing to a date because of his insistence. And I've never regretted it either. We pretty much have a fairy tale romance. But the only thing that's been in our way ever since the first year of our relationship has been my mother-in-law. Now, you guys may have heard of mother-in-laws who dislike their daughters-in-law, but that's not the case here. No, it's much worse, because unlike others, my mother-in-law absolutely loathes me. She can't stand the sight of me and has made it abundantly clear right from the first time that my fiancé brought me home to meet his family. 4 months into our relationship, she pulled me aside after dinner and told me to break up with him, or she'd make my life no less than a nightmare. I was obviously shocked that she'd spoken to me this way, since she'd been really sweet to me throughout dinner, but obviously that was just an act for my fiancé. She called me a glorified maid and said that she wasn't going to let some gold-digger flight attendant steal her son away from her when he could do so much better. Not only that, she also hated the fact that I was older than him and told me to go find someone my age instead. I felt humiliated and had half a mind to tell my fiancé about what had happened, but decided against it because I wanted to show my mother-in-law that I wasn't the weak and flimsy woman she expected me to be. And I wasn't intimidated in the slightest. Throughout the years, she's done her best to make me feel uncomfortable and put me down whenever she finds the chance at family events and holidays, but I've never let it get to me, and here we are, finally getting married. I really thought that she'd accept defeat this time and let things go gracefully, but I was wrong. As soon as she was told the news of our engagement, she tried to convince my fiancé to force me to quit my job. She told him that as an air hostess, I'd never have enough time to spend at home with him, and that would create problems in our marriage. I guess she'd expected me to say no to that, and that would inevitably lead to a fight between me and my fiancé. But little did she know, I'd already applied to switch to a desk job a couple of weeks before the engagement. I'd already been planning on making the switch regardless of marriage, so that wasn't going to be an issue at all. And of course, that was a huge disappointment to her, since we didn't have a massive fight like she'd wanted us to. So next, she started trying to take over control of the wedding and decided to call all my ideas tacky and said that I had bad taste, even though nobody else thought so. Luckily, even that was nipped in the bud by my fiancé, who told us straight away that the only thing she had any say in was the guests we invited, since they had a lot of family friends to invite, and only his mother could keep track of it. Otherwise, whatever I said would be the last word, and if she had any opinions on it, then she could simply keep it to herself. That rubbed her the wrong way as well, but after that, she started staying away from me and kept to herself most of the time. I could tell she wasn't happy about it, but now that my fiancé had made it clear that he wouldn't tolerate any disrespect towards me, there wasn't much that she could do anyway. So anyway, a week before my wedding, I brought home my wedding dress to try on the next day. My friend had her own label, so needless to say, she was my designer, and I was extremely pleased with the results. It had been months of fittings and alterations, and I couldn't believe that I finally got to try it on. It was the weekend, and my husband wasn't home that day either since he had work. So I decided to try it on and take a video of me twirling in my dress just so that I could send it to my bridesmaids. My mother-in-law had been sitting in the living room since the morning that day because she'd come over to meet my fiancé and talk to him about the guest list, so she refused to leave and said that she'd wait for him to come back home. The only time I came out of my room was to bring my dress into my bedroom since I kept it in my husband's study earlier, but I didn't trust my mother-in-law to leave it be, and that was my first mistake. I did notice her ogling the bag, and I guess she could tell by the shape of what was in it. I didn't care much about it, though, and just let her sit out there while I went back to my bedroom to try it on. But before I got into the dress, it was up to me to take a long shower and get all nice and clean before I actually tried my dress on. We have an attached bathroom, so I must have been in the shower for around half an hour before I came back out. While I was in there, I did hear some sounds outside, but didn't think much of it. I regretted it as soon as I came out and saw that my dress had been taken out of its cover and snipped in odd but noticeable places, and there were multiple red stains over it. I must not have locked the door to my bedroom properly because I was in a hurry and my mother-in-law had found it easy to force it open. I obviously knew that this had my mother-in-law written all over it, and I rushed out to confront her because I really was at my limit. But she'd already left by then. She'd even left an open bottle of red wine and a pair of scissors on the coffee table, probably to taunt me. I knew she'd done this to ruin my day and force me to wear something off the rack at the very last minute. Because obviously she's messed my dress up pretty badly and was trying to push me into a corner by ruining all that I planned for myself. This was her last attempt at ruining my wedding since she couldn't ruin my relationship with her son. I think I must have sat and cried on the couch for 10 minutes before I remembered that I've left my phone in the bedroom. I ran back to my room, and to my immense relief, I've been careless enough to leave it on the dresser while it was still recording. For the first time in my life, I was thankful that I'd forgotten about my phone and left it recording. It had captured every single thing that my mother-in-law had done, and I now had video proof of her trying to sabotage my wedding. Now I could have used it then and there and send it to my fiancé to get her uninvited from the wedding and probably have her cut off from us for the rest of our lives. But I decided to go a step further and get back at her for everything that she put me through all these years. I put up with enough without a word, simply because I was determined to stay with my fiancé. It wasn't even a war against her, at least on my end. I just didn't want to stir up drama, and I knew that she'd go out of her way to be cruel just to incite a reaction from me. So I stayed quiet, even in the face of insane cruelty and disrespect, for the sake of my own sanity in my relationship. But I had enough. I thought that responding negatively to her behavior would mean that she'd win, but this time, she truly outdone herself. If her reaction was what she wanted, then that was exactly what I was going to give her. I was very careful to save the video, and even saved it to my laptop just in case. I dried my tears and sent my dress back to my friend, requesting her to fix all the things that my mother-in-law had done to her. She was the only person apart from me who was aware of the situation, and I can't put into words how thankful I am for her kindness and support. She told me she'd get it done before my wedding day, and I didn't need to worry about a thing, which was just so sweet. The next few days after that, My mother-in-law visited regularly under the pretext of speaking to my fiancé, and I was as nice to her as I could be. Even she seemed to be taken aback by my behavior, since she'd obviously expected me to be majorly pissed off about what she'd done. But I merely pretended that nothing had happened at all, and that did a pretty good job of misleading her into believing that I'd looked past the incident with the wedding dress. So she started getting even more smug and would make remarks about how she couldn't wait for the day of my wedding to see me all in white. She had no idea what I had up my sleeve, so I kept my mouth shut and only smiled whenever she passed these comments. I told my friend to bring the dress with her only on the morning of my wedding because I didn't want to risk any more such incidents.